Arrival at the mansion. The car rattled to a stop at the base of the long gravel drive, its headlights sweeping over the looming silhouette of the mansion. Even in the fading light, Sofia could see that the place carried a weight of history. Gables jutted sharply against the sky, and stone gargoyles crouched on the corners of the roof, as though guarding secrets best left unspoken. She tightened her grip on the suitcase in her lap. She hadn't been here since childhood, and even then her memories were hazy. Glimpses of marble floors, rooms that smelled faintly of lavender and dust, and a tall, commanding figure who was her Aunt Helena. Now she had returned not as a visitor but as caretaker. The thought sat uncomfortably in her chest, half duty, half opportunity. The driver helped her with her bag, muttered a farewell and drove off, leaving Sofia alone before the great oak doors. They creaked open before she could knock. A tall woman in a starched uniform appeared. Her hair was grey, pulled into a severe bun, and her expression gave nothing away. "You must be Miss Sofia," the woman said. "I am Mrs. Keene, the housekeeper. Madam is expecting you." Sofia followed her inside. The entrance hall was grand but cold, lit by a chandelier that gave off a tired golden glow. Shadows pooled in the corners, where portraits of stern ancestors stared down with disapproving eyes. The air smelled of polish and something older, something like stone dampened by rain. "Your aunt is not well," Mrs. Keene continued, her shoes clicking against the marble floor. "She's been weaker of late. Still, she insisted you come." When Sofia entered the drawing room, her heart tightened. Aunt Helena sat in a velvet armchair by the fire, wrapped in a thick shawl. She looked smaller than Sofia remembered, her once sharp features softened by age and illness, but her eyes, pale and piercing, were the same. "My dear," Helena said, her voice dry but steady, "you look so much like your mother." The words caught Sofia off guard. She managed a small smile and leaned down to kiss her aunt's cheek. "I'm glad you asked me to come," she said softly. "I'll take care of whatever you need." Helena's thin hand clasped hers. "This house, it requires more than dusting and tending fires. There are rules, Sofia, rules you must follow." Sofia frowned. What kind of rules? Before Helena could answer, Mrs. Keene cleared her throat sharply. The older woman's eyes flicked toward the hallway that stretched into the west wing, where the corridor ended in a heavy door of blackened oak bound in iron. It seemed to swallow what little light touched it. Helena's voice lowered to a whisper. "Never go beyond that door. Promise me." Sofia's chest tightened at the sudden gravity in her aunt's tone. She glanced at the door, cold and impenetrable, then back at her aunt's pale face. "I promise," she said. But as the fire crackled and shadows deepened in the corners of the room, Sofia felt a chill creep down her spine. Somewhere in the distance, faint and hollow, came the sound of a slow, deliberate knock, echoing from the west wing. Whispers in the dark. Sofia woke with a start. The clock on the nightstand glowed 2:13 a.m. The mansion was silent, save for the restless sigh of the wind against the tall windows. She tried to settle back into the pillows, but then she heard it again, faint, almost too soft to notice at first. A shuffle, a drag, then the whisper of footsteps across the distant floorboards. Her skin prickled. She slipped out of bed. her bare feet brushing against the cool rug, and listened. The sound seemed to come from the west wing, far down the corridor. A low creak groaned through the house, like weight shifting on ancient beams. Sophia pulled her robe tighter around her shoulders. She told herself old houses made noises, pipes knocking, wood settling, yet the sound was too deliberate, too measured, like someone moving slowly in the dark. The urge to investigate pulled at her, but Mrs. Keene's warning and her aunt's solemn request echoed in her mind. Never go beyond that door. With a swallow, she returned to bed. When morning came, the mansion was washed in pale sunlight, as though the night's strangeness had never happened. Downstairs, Mrs. Keene was setting the table for breakfast. "You didn't sleep well," the housekeeper observed without looking up. Sophia hesitated. "Did you hear anything last night?" "From the west wing." The older woman froze just for a moment before arranging the silverware again. "The west wing has been closed for years," she said flatly. "Best not to imagine things." "But I heard footsteps," Sophia insisted. Mrs. Keene's eyes flicked up sharp as broken glass. "This house is full of echoes. It remembers more than it should. Do not go poking where you shouldn't." Sophia bristled at the rebuke, but let the subject drop. Still, her curiosity gnawed at her through the day. Later, as she carried a tray of tea to Helena's room, she caught sight of her aunt staring at the window, her face pale and drawn. "Aunt Helena," Sophia said gently, "I think someone might be in the west wing." "Shouldn't we call the police?" "No." Helena's reply was immediate, fierce. She turned, her eyes blazing with sudden energy. "You must never call outsiders here. Promise me that." Sophia set the tray down carefully. "But—" Helena grasped her wrist with surprising strength. "That door must remain closed. No matter what you hear. Do you understand?" The fire in her aunt's gaze silenced her. Sophia nodded, though unease coiled tighter in her stomach. That night the sounds returned, louder this time. She lay rigid in her bed, every nerve strained. Whispers rose faintly, words she couldn't make out, carried through the air like a breath against the ear. Then metal scraping against stone. Her heart pounded. She slipped from the bed and crept to her door. The corridor stretched long and dim, shadows crouching in the corners. At the far end, beyond the flickering sconces, the blackened oak door of the west wing seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the sounds behind it. A whisper, low and shivering, threaded through the silence. "Sophia." She stumbled back, hand over her mouth, but when she looked again the corridor was empty. Only the locked door remained, silent, waiting. The illness. The morning broke heavy with rain. Water streaked down the tall windows of the dining room, blurring the garden beyond into a grey wash. Sophia set the breakfast table, the clatter of porcelain filling the silence. Aunt Helena had not yet come down, which was unusual. She was always prompt, her routines precise as clockwork. Mrs. Keene's expression was more severe than usual as she poured coffee. "Madam didn't sleep well," she said. "She asked for you to bring her tray upstairs." Sophia carried the tray with careful hands, but when she entered Helena's bedroom, her heart stuttered. Her aunt sat slumped in the armchair by the fire, her shawl slipping from one shoulder. Her face was pale, her lips tinged with grey. "Aunt Helena," The older woman stirred faintly, her voice little more than a breath. It has begun. Panic surged in Sofia. She set the tray down and knelt beside her aunt. What's wrong? Should I call a doctor? Helena clutched Sofia's hand with trembling fingers. He cannot help. This house takes what it wants. Her eyes flicked toward the window, toward the distant west wing. The door. Promise me you'll keep it closed. Before Sofia could press her, Helena slumped against the chair, consciousness slipping away. Mrs. Keene hurried in, alarm flashing across her usually stone-set face. Quickly, help me lay her on the bed. Together they eased Helena beneath the covers, where her chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. The doctor arrived an hour later, summoned despite Helena's wishes. He was a weary man with spectacles and a black bag. After examining her, he shook his head. Exhaustion, weakness, no fever, no clear cause. Her body is simply failing her. That can't be all, Sofia protested. She was fine yesterday. She was talking, walking. The doctor held up a hand. I'll prescribe a tonic, but there is little more to be done. He packed up his bag and left without further comfort. By afternoon, Helena drifted in and out of a restless sleep. Each time she stirred, she murmured fragments as though speaking to unseen figures. Sofia caught only pieces, the chains, the bargain, the door. As night fell, other shadows crept into the mansion, relatives. Sofia had met them only in passing before, cousins and second cousins, all sharp suits and colder smiles. Richard, the eldest, took command immediately, striding through the halls with the air of an heir surveying his prize. She's nearly gone, he said bluntly, his eyes fixed on Helena's bedroom door. It's only a matter of time now. The will must be settled. Sofia bristled. She's not dead. She's fighting. Richard gave her a look both pitying and cruel. Don't be naive, cousin. When the old guard falls, the rest of us must prepare to take what's ours. Mrs. Keene's lips thinned, but she said nothing. That night, when the storm returned and rattled the windows, Helena stirred again. She pulled Sofia close with a strength that belied her frailty. Her whisper was urgent, rasping. The door, don't let them open it. Promise me, child. Her eyes burned with feverish light, and for a moment Sofia saw not weakness but terror, and somewhere deep within the west wing something moved in answer. Family. Intrigues. The mansion grew louder, with Helena bedridden, not from her voice, but from the shuffle of relatives filling the halls, like crows on a fence. Sofia could hardly step into a room without overhearing low, urgent conversations. Richard's voice carried the strongest. The lawyer says the estate is worth more than any of you realize. Property, investments, holdings abroad. Once Helena's gone, it's ours to divide. Not if she changes the will, murmured another cousin, eyes darting towards Sofia. Sofia clenched her fists and walked on, ignoring the way their words curled around her like smoke. The house, once solemn and still, now buzzed with greed. In Helena's room, Mrs. Keene guarded her mistress like a sentinel. She kept the relatives at bay, insisting Helena needed rest. Yet even as Sofia sat at Helena's side, she could feel their eyes watching through the crack of the door. That night, at dinner, Richard raised his glass with mock solemnity. To dear Aunt Helena, May her suffering be brief. Several relatives chuckled darkly. Sofia slammed her fork down. She's still alive. Show some respect, Richard only smirked. Respect won't feed us, cousin. When the curtain falls, the inheritance is all that matters. You should prepare yourself. Sofia stared at him, revulsion twisting her stomach. All you care about is the fortune. Fortune is all this family has left, Richard said smoothly. Helena's wealth is the glue. Without it, we're nothing. Mrs. Keene cleared her throat sharply, ending the exchange, but the damage lingered. Later, as Sofia climbed the staircase toward her room, she paused. The air was thick, heavier than before. From the direction of the west wing came a faint sound, a scrape, then a muffled thud. Her pulse quickened. She stepped closer, drawn against her will. The blackened oak door loomed at the end of the corridor, its iron bands catching the candlelight. She swore she heard a low moan from behind it, like someone in pain. Before she could take another step, a hand landed on her shoulder. She spun around to find Richard, his smile cruel in the flickering light. Curiosity, he drawled, is a dangerous habit. His gaze flicked to the door, then back to her. I saw you listening. Don't pretend otherwise. I wasn't. Save it. He leaned in closer. You think you're Helena's favorite, the dutiful caretaker. But if you meddle in things you don't understand, you'll regret it. His grip tightened just enough to bruise before he released her. With a smirk, he strolled back down the hall. Sofia stood frozen, her breath ragged. She turned back to the door. The moan had faded, swallowed by silence, but the memory lingered like a phantom touch. Back in her room, she pressed her back against the door, trembling. Her aunt's warning rang in her ears. Never go beyond that door. But she knew now that Richard suspected something, and that whatever lay behind the oak barrier was not just her imagination. It was real. And it was waiting. The key. The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It streaked the windows and drummed on the roof, filling the house with a restless rhythm. Inside, the mansion seemed to breathe with it, groaning, whispering, alive in ways Sofia didn't want to imagine. Helena grew weaker. Her eyes opened only for moments at a time, and when they did, she spoke in riddles, her voice quivering like a candle about to gutter out. On the 4th morning, Sofia was tidying Helena's bed when her fingers brushed something hard beneath the mattress. At first she thought it was a stray button or trinket, but when she pulled it free, her breath caught. It was a key, iron, small but solid, with an ornate handle shaped like twisting vines. The teeth of it were uneven, old, almost hand-forged. Even before she could think it through, she knew what door it belonged to, the west wing. Her heart pounded as she closed her hand around it. The weight of it felt unnatural, as though it carried more than just metal, an expectation, a destiny. She slipped it into her pocket just as Mrs. Keene entered the room. The housekeeper's eyes narrowed. What have you found? Sofia forced a smile, holding up the blanket she'd been straightening. Just tidying. Mrs. Keene's gaze lingered on her too long. Then she moved to Helena's bedside, adjusting the covers with careful precision. Don't meddle where you don't belong, Miss Sofia. This house remembers every hand that trespasses. The words sent a shiver through her. Did Mrs. Keene know about the key? That evening, The noises returned. Sofia lay awake, listening. The whispers were clearer now, though she couldn't make out words, only the rhythm of them, hushed and insistent, like a chant. A slow scrape followed, then the rattle of chains. Her hand slipped into her pocket, feeling the outline of the key. The thought of using it terrified her, yet the mystery tugged stronger with every sound. The next morning she couldn't bear the silence any longer. She cornered Mrs. Keene in the kitchen. "What is in the west wing?" The woman's face hardened. "Nothing you need concern yourself with." "Don't lie to me. I hear it every night. Someone is in there." Mrs. Keene slammed a pan onto the counter with such force Sofia flinched. "Do you want the truth? That door holds our curse. Your aunt has spent her life keeping it closed, and if you value your soul, you'll do the same." Sofia stared at her, stunned by the raw intensity in her voice, but Mrs. Keene only turned away, shoulders trembling, and whispered, "Some doors were never meant to be opened." That night the whispers came again, clearer than ever. This time one word rose from the darkness, unmistakable, her name, Sofia. Her hand clenched around the key beneath her pillow, and she knew she couldn't resist forever. The first attempt. The storm raged outside, wind howling through the cracks of the mansion, rattling the shutters like a warning. The whole house seemed alive with it, whispering, urging. Sofia sat in her room, the key burning against her palm. She couldn't stand it any more. The sounds from the west wing were louder than ever. Chains dragging, a low groan, and once a soft sob that made her blood run cold. She slipped from her room, candle in hand, and padded down the corridor. Shadows leapt across the walls. At the far end the oak door loomed, its iron bands glistening in the flickering light. Her hands trembled as she slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. She drew a deep breath, heart hammering, but before she could turn it, a hand clamped down on her wrist. Sofia gasped and whirled. Richard's face hovered inches from hers, twisted into a mocking smile. His eyes gleamed with cruel delight. "Caught you," he whispered. "I wasn't—" "Oh, save it. You were going to open it. Don't deny it." His voice dripped with contempt. "You think you're clever, skulking around like some heroine, but you don't know what you're meddling with." Sofia tried to pull free, but his grip tightened. "What do you know about it?" she demanded. Richard leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. "Enough to know that behind that door lies power and wealth, the very thing Helena's been hoarding all these years. You think she kept it locked because of some fairy tale curse? Number. She kept it locked to keep the fortune for herself." His words chilled her, but his smile froze her more. He wanted the door open. With a shove, he released her. "Touch it again, cousin, and you'll regret it." He disappeared into the shadows, leaving her trembling. The whispers from behind the door rose again, urgent, pleading. Sofia fled back to her room, clutching the key, her mind burning with questions. Revelation in the dark. The following night the storm returned, fiercer than before. Lightning forked across the sky and thunder shook the windows. Sofia lay awake, listening to the chains rattling in the west wing. She couldn't resist any longer. Heart racing, she slipped into the corridor and crept toward the oak door. The key turned easily this time, with a groan of ancient iron. The lock clicked, and the door swung inward with a hiss of stale, cold air. She stepped inside. The chamber was long and narrow, lit by a single candelabra burning low. Portraits of stern ancestors lined the walls, their eyes following her. At the far end, chained to the stone wall, was a figure, a woman. She was gaunt, her hair silver and tangled, her skin pale as parchment, but her eyes were Helena's. Sofia staggered back. Who are you?" The woman's voice was weak but clear. "Your aunt's sister. Eliza, they told you I was dead, didn't they?" Sofia's breath caught. She remembered faint whispers of a twin, long gone, spoken of only in hushed tones. "They locked me here," Eliza rasped, lifting her shackled hands. "Years ago, when the bargain was struck, the fortune flows only as long as the bloodline is bound. One must be chained, so the rest may thrive." Sofia's knees weakened. "The family curse," Eliza nodded slowly. "Helena guarded the door all her life. She couldn't free me, but you can." Sofia stepped closer, tears burning her eyes. The sight of this wasted woman, her kin, chained like an animal, it was unbearable. But then she remembered Helena's warnings. Never open the door, never set her free. Before she could decide, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Richard's voice, sharp and eager. "So, you found her." The confrontation. Richard strode into the chamber, flanked by two cousins. His eyes glittered with triumph as they fell on Eliza. "There she is. Proof of everything I suspected." He turned to Sofia. "You see, cousin, this is why Helena guarded the West Wing. This is the source of it all," Eliza spat weakly. "You vultures, you would chain me forever just for your gold." Richard sneered. "Gold, estates, power, it's what keeps us alive in this world. Do you think I'd throw it all away for pity?" Sofia stood between them, her heart hammering. "She's family. You can't just leave her like this." Richard stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "You're young, Sofia. You don't understand. Free her, and everything collapses. The estate, the fortune, the life of comfort. You'll doom us all." Lightning cracked outside, throwing shadows across the chamber. The cousins muttered, divided, some looking away in guilt, others hungry for Richard's promise of wealth. Eliza lifted her chains with trembling hands. "Please, I've suffered enough. Don't let them use me any longer." Sofia's eyes burned with tears, torn between Helena's warning, Richard's threats, and Eliza's desperate plea. She felt the mansion closing in on her. Mrs. Keene appeared suddenly in the doorway, her face pale, her voice fierce. "This curse has rotted this family long enough. End it, Sofia. End it before greed devours you too." The room erupted. Richard shouting, Eliza pleading, Mrs. Keene urging. The storm outside pounded in rhythm with Sofia's racing heart, and she knew the decision would be hers alone. The choice. The chamber seemed to shrink, every sound magnified. The thunder, the chains rattling, the greedy voices demanding her answer. Richard's hand shot out, pointing at the shackled woman. "If you release her, you condemn us all to ruin." Everything Helena built, gone, the estate seized, the money wasted. "Is that what you want?" Eliza's voice cracked. I want to breathe free air before I die. I want to feel the sun. Is that so terrible? Sofia looked from one to the other, her breath trembling. Her aunt's voice echoed in her mind. The door must remain closed, but beneath it came another whisper, her own conscience. Could she live with herself if she let Eliza rot away in the dark, just for gold? Richard stepped closer, fury in his eyes. Choose, Sofia, wealth and survival, or ruin. Sofia turned to Eliza. The woman's eyes, so like Helena's, shimmered with desperate hope. She raised the key. Her hands shook, but her voice came steady. I choose freedom. The chains clattered to the floor as she unlocked them one by one. Eliza collapsed into her arms, sobbing with relief. The portraits on the walls seemed to shudder. The air grew heavy, the stones groaning. Outside, the storm swelled to a roar. Richard cursed, backing away. You've destroyed us. The chamber trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. The mansion itself seemed to mourn the breaking of the pact. But Sofia held Eliza close, whispering, You're free now. Whatever happens, you're free. Resolution. The storm battered the mansion until dawn. By the time the thunder faded, the house was changed. The grand chandeliers were cracked, the portraits warped with mould. The air smelled of damp and rot, as though decades of decay had risen overnight. The wealth was gone, not in coins or jewels, but in the essence of the estate itself. The bargain had unravelled, the relatives scattered, cursing Sofia's name, vowing they would never forgive her. Richard left with rage in his eyes, but powerless now, his fortune dissolved. Helena passed quietly that morning, her last breath soft as a sigh, but her face bore a peace Sofia had never seen, as though she'd been waiting for this release all her life. Sofia buried her aunt beneath the old oak tree in the garden, with Eliza at her side. The woman stood trembling, her first sunrise in decades painting her face in gold. You saved me, Eliza whispered. Sofia squeezed her hand. I saved us both. They left the mansion together, its broken windows watching like blind eyes. The path ahead was uncertain, stripped of wealth and security, but for the first time Sofia felt light, untethered, unburdened. She had given up fortune but gained something greater. Truth, freedom, and the strength to choose her own future. Behind them, the locked door hung open, its secret finally released, and the mansion, once heavy with whispers, fell silent.